For spine-chilling true terror stories revealed, unexplained haunting sinister secrets exposed. Jessica's heart raced as she listened to the echoing creaks above her. The once comforting sounds of her family home had morphed into a chorus of dread. Shadows danced in the corners of her vision, stretching and shifting under the glow of the street lamp outside, yet when she turned to look, they disappeared. Her children, oblivious and playful, provided fleeting moments of joy, muffled by the gnawing fear that clung to her like a second skin. Each night brought muffled whispers that seemed to seep from the very walls, scraping at the edges of her sanity. Maplewood appeared picturesque from a distance, manicured lawns and cheerful neighbors that exchanged friendly waves. But there was a darkness lingering just beneath the surface. Her neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, always perched comfortably on his porch with his charming, disarming smile. Those eyes, though, spoke a different story. They flickered with a menacing glint that sent shivers racing down her spine. As Jessica juggled two jobs to keep the lights on, her exhaustion morphed into an uncomfortable vigilance. With every creak of the old wooden floors and every gust of wind that rattled the windows, the house seemed to come alive, crawling with an unseen presence. Her children's midnight screams jolted her awake, their dreams haunted by a figure lurking just outside their window. Piecing together the shards of fear, her mind connected the dots too vividly. A chain of missing persons from the neighborhood linked to that man next door. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, a jarring crash from the attic yanked her from her restless dreams. Heart pounding, she raced up the stairs, each footfall amplifying her dread. The attic was a dust-laden abyss, littered with boxes of forgotten memories and ghostly quiet. Nothing seemed disturbed except for a slight draft that whispered across her neck. She felt a chill crawl up her spine as she turned to leave, dismissing it as her imagination running wild, but then the whispers grew louder, echoes of warnings that wrapped tighter around her mind. The local authorities brushed her away, dismissing her fears, blind to the menace coursing through Maplewood. Alone and growing weaker, Jessica scoured old newspapers and stumbled upon a chilling tale of betrayal and buried terror, an unsettling legend that made her stomach churn. Then, a letter slipped underneath her front door. The handwriting was shaky and barely legible but familiar enough to rob her of breath. It urged her to leave town before it was too late. The chilling sentiment echoed in her mind as her children's vivid nightmares replayed through her thoughts. Something was waiting for them, lurking in the shadows, eyes fixed on her family. As the days dragged on, Jessica tightened her grip on reality, aware she stood at a precipice. The darkness beckoned, clawing at her sanity and whispering against the walls of her once safe haven. With mounting terror, she prepared for the confrontation, driven to reveal the secrets Mr. Hargrove hid. She knew, deep in her gut, that unveiling the truth could unearth horrors that would leave her family lost in the dark. As dusk settled in, Jessica could feel the shadows stretch and deepen around her home, wrapping the walls in an unsettling embrace. She watched her children play in the yard, their laughter dancing like brittle chimes against the oppressive air. Her heart sank, aware that this echoed innocence stood poised on the brink of a nightmare. Gripping a flashlight, she steeled herself and headed back to the attic. This time, the ambience felt hauntingly palpable. She crawled into the space, each movement releasing a cloud of dust that caught the weak light. The attic was more than just a storage area, it felt like the heart of the home's secrets. She rummaged through old boxes, some labeled with fading letters, memories of lives once lived. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something cold and metal. She pulled out a rusted key. "What are you hiding?" she whispered, the fear coiling in her stomach. Flashes of midnight screams filled her mind, the ghostly figure again looming just outside her children's window. The key lay heavy in her palm, its significance gnawing at her. Downstairs, the air grew still, the silence thick like molasses. She glanced at the front door, heart racing. An unsettling thought crept in: what if she buried too deep into the past? What if Mr. Hargrove's secrets were more disastrous than she could fathom? She shook the thoughts away, remembering the urgency in that strange letter. They were running out of time. That evening, the unsettling murmurs returned. She could almost hear her name being called, faint but recognizable. Jessica, they echoed softly, hauntingly, coaxing her toward the unknown. Driven by an adrenaline-infused resolve, she gathered her children and locked them in for the night, but not before placing a chair under their bedroom doorknob, a flimsy barrier against whatever lay beyond. With the key tucked securely in her pocket, Jessica felt an overwhelming sense of determination wash over her. If Mr. Hargrove was connected to the missing persons, she needed to see his domain. Her feet itched to move toward the light filtering through the trees as shadows stretched longer, fingertips curling toward her like icy hands. Maybe she could find the answers. Maybe she could confront him. Steeling herself against the unease, she approached his house, each step echoing like a funeral dirge. She peered through the tall hedges, spying on her neighbor. The porch lights flickered, and there he was, sitting as usual. But tonight, he wasn't alone. There were two others, faces obscured in shadow, leaning in close, whispering. Jessica lunged backward as dread pooled in her stomach. The whispered suspicion that something macabre was happening behind those doors consumed her. Sudden footsteps startled her. She whipped around to see her children standing by her side, puzzled and sleepy. "Mommy, what's wrong?" they asked in unison, their innocent curiosity tearing at her heart. No. You shouldn't be out here," she hissed, panic rising within her. But the words barely left her lips when the world around her shifted. The door to Mr. Hargrove's house swung open, the flickering light spilling out like a dark invitation. It revealed three figures silhouetted against the threshold, and they all turned in unison toward Jessica and her children. "Welcome home, Jessica," Mr. Hargrove's voice slithered through the darkness, sickly sweet. As that grin stretched across his face, a chilling realization settled like ice in her veins. This was no coincidence. Her family had become part of whatever sinister game was being played. In the heavy silence, she felt the pull of the unknown tightening around her, the key in her pocket burning against her skin, urging her to uncover answers that might shatter what little remains of her sanity. But would she dare to turn the key to those horrors waiting just beyond the next chapter? Instantly, the atmosphere thickened, the air growing heavy with unspoken threats. Jessica's heart raced, pounding in her chest as she shoved her children behind her. The laughter that once filled their home now seemed a memory tainted with terror. She could feel their small bodies trembling against her, and for a fleeting moment, she wished she could shield them from whatever horror awaited. "Mommy, I'm scared," one of her children whispered, eyes wide with confusion and fear. She turned slightly, holding them close, breathing deeply to calm her own racing heart. Mr. Hargrove and the two figures still stood silhouetted in the doorway, waiting as though they relished the anxiety clawing at her sanity. "Jessica," Mr. Hargrove mused, his voice sticky like honey. "Why don't you come closer? We have so much to discuss." The figures beside him shifted, shadows stretching, revealing nothing but dark corners where faces should be. She felt a rush of bile rise in her throat. "Leave us alone," she shouted, though her voice quivered, uncertainty creeping in. "Oh, we wouldn't dream of hurting you. It's your presence that interests us," he replied, a sly grin splitting his face further, revealing a darkness behind his eyes that chilled her to the bone. Jessica glanced nervously at the end of the street. There were no signs of help. The neighborhood felt abandoned, as if the very air was conspiring against her. Suddenly, an idea struck. Fear surged like fire in her veins. The key! Whatever it unlocked might be a route away from this nightmare or into her past's horrors. She could feel its weight in her pocket, an unsettling reminder of the choice she would have to make soon. "Stay back," she urged, positioning her children behind her, shielding them with the only weapon she now had, her maternal instinct. "You have no right to threaten us. I won't let you." Mr. Hargrove's smile faltered for just a moment, replaced by something darker. The shift sent a shiver running down her spine. But you've opened the door, Jessica. You've invited the past back into your life. This is just the beginning. Before she could grasp fully what that meant, a loud crash echoed from the house behind her. The porch light faded, and an unholy wind whipped around them, ruffling her children's hair. Jessica cursed herself for not noticing. The murmurs suddenly amplified, filling the evening with a cacophony of disembodied voices, each one calling out her name, demanding her attention, begging for acknowledgement. "Mommy, I don't like this, I don't like it," her child cried, clutching tighter onto her leg. A wave of helplessness washed over her, and she yearned to carry them away, far from the sinister eyes watching them. Then, out of the shadows, the figures began to take form. Their eyes glinted in the darkness like distant stars, watching with an intensity that felt suffocating. Jessica's mind raced. She needed to get back to her house, her safe haven. But there was a danger lurking in every direction, a sinister force that made her feet feel glued to the ground. "Jessica," a voice split through the shadows, low and taunting. "Open the door. Find the truth. It's time to face your fears, isn't it?" Jessica tightened her grip on the flashlight, the only thing between them and whatever awaited her. She whispered to her children, urging them to stay quiet, as dread coursed through her veins. She had the key that could unlock a world of horrors. She had to decide now. "Mommy, what do we do?" her child asked, breaking her resolve with those innocent eyes full of concern. This was it. She had to choose, a clash of instinct between protecting her children and the insatiable need to uncover the truth behind the darkness surrounding them. But did she even know what that truth was? With the key burning a hole in her pocket, fear and determination collided within her. Just as she turned to bolt back toward their home, the flickering light from Mr. Hargrove's house illuminated a dark figure standing behind him, a shadow with familiar features, watching her with a knowing gaze. Who was it? That was the last question she pondered as she broke into a run. But as the figures from the other side whispered her name, she knew she was not alone. And somewhere deep within, she began to understand the key's dreadful significance. Jessica sprinted, her feet pounding against the cracked pavement, dragging her children behind her. Each step felt heavier, the shadows chasing her seemed to mock her efforts. They swirled, closing in, whispering her name like a haunting lullaby. The echo of their words sent a chill through her spine, a symphony of dread. The night air was thick with fear, and all she could think of was the door to their home. It had always been a sanctuary. Yet with each frantic breath, she questioned the safety of what waited inside. What truths lay there, waiting to ensnare her? "Mommy, don't let them get us," her youngest cried, tears streaming down a face pulled taut with terror, and Jessica felt the panic rising in her throat. "Hold on tight," she urged, clutching their small hands firmly in hers. Her heart raced, pumping adrenaline through her veins as she dashed toward their house, but the distance stretched impossibly far. The figures were gaining ground, their whispers shifting into guttural growls that scraped against her sanity. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through, sending ice prickling her skin. Jessica stumbled, nearly losing her balance. As she steadied herself, she glanced back, and her stomach dropped. The two ominous figures had stepped away from Mr. Hargrove, their features sharpening in the pulsating light from the house. One tall, with a face that was an inky void, reached out an elongated hand, almost inviting her to come closer. "Don't look at them," she shouted, shaking her head in defiance. The world around her dimmed, the shadows thickening, threatening to consume her. She wrenched her gaze back to her home, its door now appearing to loom like a mouth gaping wide, eager for her to step inside. Uncertainty twisted her stomach. "Mommy, what if it's worse in there?" the older child asked, reading her mind. Jessica's heart sank. What if the darkness awaited her within those familiar walls, waiting to spring its dreadful trap? "No, we have to try. We have to get to safety." She pushed the thought aside, forcing herself to believe in their sanctuary. They reached the porch steps, her breath hitching as she fumbled for the key in her pocket. It felt slick and warm, almost alive in her frantic grasp. The whispers crescendoed, now a thunderstorm of sound, each voice weaving through her mind, threatening to unravel her thoughts. "Jessica, it's time, shut up." She screamed into the night air, her voice piercing through the chaos, but her resolve felt fragile. She could feel the weight of the night pressing down, and as she reached the top step, the key fell from her grasp. It clattered against the wood, a sharp, echoing sound drowning out the whispers. "No!" she gasped, darting down to retrieve it, hands shaking violently. As she did, her flashlight beam caught a glimpse of something behind her eyes glowing, reflecting her terror with a sinister glee. Jessica, the voice was bone-chillingly intimate, familiar yet foreign, crawling beneath her skin like an unwelcome memory. She jerked up, now feeling the suffocating terror pressing in from all angles, the shadows growing nearer. It was now or never. "Open the door!" she screamed, scrambling back to the door, fumbling with the key. She felt warmth against her back, a presence shadowing her, watching. Just as the lock clicked, the breathless sound of rush filled the air. The figures surged forward, their forms shifting, merging with the darkness around her. "Mommy!" With a final desperate turn, she flung the door open, flinging herself and her children inside, slamming it shut behind them. Panting, she pressed her back against the door, heart thundering like a war drum. But as she turned to look at her children, error washed over her once more. The living room was dim, shadows flitting against the walls like lost souls. "Mommy, where are they?" She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. A cold dread filled her. The whispers from outside had followed them in, swirling within the very walls of their home. And at that moment, she didn't only question what waited outside. The question echoed. Hauntingly, what if the true horror was already among them? Jessica felt the air grow thicker, a suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. Shadows seemed to breathe, curling and twisting into shapes that defied reality. She strained her ears, but the whispers from outside now coiled around her like smoke, a lingering promise of doom. "Mommy," her youngest whimpered, clinging to her leg. The innocence in those frightened eyes sent a stab of pain through her heart. Who was she protecting them from? What was outside or what was lurking within? "Stay close," she whispered, kneeling down, trying to reassure them even as her own nerves frayed. She scanned the room, searching for anything unsettling, any telltale sign that the true horror lay in the cozy confines of their home. Beneath a flickering bulb, the walls appeared to pulsate, as if the house itself were alive, breathing with dread. The living room was a disheveled mess, toys strewn about, a picture frame askew, and the light, wavering as if fighting against an unseen force. It felt like a trap, and with every second, the shadows closed in, the air thickening with their oppressive presence. "Mommy, are they still out there?" her older child echoed, voice quaking. I don't know," she admitted, desperation clawing at her throat. That wasn't the answer a child needed to hear. But the truth lodged like a stone in her heart. They had escaped one horror only to step into another. "Let's check the windows," she said, forcing a steadiness she didn't feel. Heart in her throat, she slid across the room toward the nearest window. When sunlight would pour through during the day, now it was an opaque barrier that seemed to deny her sight. She peered through the glass, her heart racing as she leaned closer, expecting to see those figures merging with the shadows of their yard. Nothing. But in that eerie silence, she felt a chill crawl up her spine. It was too quiet. The sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves or the faint creaking of branches, had been swallowed whole. The children crept closer, shadows cast on the floor flickering with uncertainty. When she turned to comfort them, her heart sank. The room felt colder, devoid of warmth. It was a shift, a palpable change, as if they were no longer alone. Suddenly, a scratch came from deep within the house, a slow, deliberate sound that clawed at her fear. Jessica's breath caught. "Do you hear that?" Her children nodded, wide-eyed. "Hide," she whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. She ushered them behind the couch, her heart pounding like thunder. Slowly, they crouched, hearts racing in shared silence, the whispering shadows wrapping tighter around them, feeding on their fear. Jessica dared to take a step, inching toward the source of the sound. It was rhythmic, like nails scraping against wood. A ghastly crawl of ice shot down her spine. "Please, don't let it be," the thought echoed unbidden in her mind, the unspeakable terror clawing for a voice. Just then, the scratching stopped. The house held its breath with her. Momentary silence engulfed them, and then she heard it, a soft rustling, familiar. A voice, not outside, not the malicious whispers she feared, but from within. "Jessica, come play." Her blood froze. It was a melody, a luring wail, laced with mockery. The voice slipped through the cracks like a snake, slithering into her ears. It didn't belong to anyone she knew, yet it felt intimately dangerous, a lure into darkness. "Don't!" she gasped, shaking her head as visions of the nightmarish figures flooded her mind. She couldn't let them hear that voice, not ever. But the children, innocent and naive, started to pull away from her grip, mesmerized by the sound. "No, no! Stay with me!" she cried, panic surging through her veins. In that moment, she understood. The real horror was not what lay outside but what was hiding within the walls, something that wanted them, something that would stop at nothing. As the voice continued to weave its sinister invitation, the shadows shifted violently. In that moment of ephemeral clarity, Jessica realized she had to make a choice. Would she confront the darkness inside or flee back into the unknown outside? And as she stood on the precipice of that decision, she felt the walls stir, the house alive, waiting for her answer. She could feel something creeping toward them, she could sense the danger rising. The choice was hers, but what if whatever lurked beyond the threshold had already made its move? The house groaned as if it were coming alive, every creak and shudder echoing the dread that coursed through Jessica. She could almost feel the gaze of unseen eyes watching her, soaking in her fear like a sponge. The soft, luring voice thrummed in her ears, wrapping around her thoughts and planting seeds of doubt. "Stay!" she ordered more fiercely, yanking the children closer, feeling their small, warm bodies shiver. The shadows beyond the couch swirled, pulsating as a dark fog, creeping in more maliciously with each passing moment. "Mommy, I want to play," the youngest murmured, his voice a soft echo of the sinister call from the walls. It sliced through her resolve, a blade of innocence cutting against her panic. "No! We cannot play!" she hissed, pulling them tighter. "We have to hide. It's trying to trick you." But even as she spoke, she watched her children struggle against her grasp, eyes glazed, mesmerized by the soothing, deceitful tone. The walls breathed, and the air shifted as if teasing with the promise of dark delights just beyond the threshold of safety. "Jessica," the voice cooed again, lilting and inviting. "Let us play hide and seek just like the fun we always had." An icy dread settled in Jessica's gut. Something in the voice felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. Her fraught mind spiraled with questions. Who was inside their house? The light in the room flickered more violently now, shadows dancing mockingly. She ducked lower, heart racing. Was it playing with them? Having fun while they cowered? She steeled her resolve. There was no way she could let whatever that was have her children. With a swift decision, she yanked them to their feet. "We're leaving!" she shouted, lunging toward the door at the end of the hall. The hallway stretched before her like a gaping maw, dark and hungry. "No!" the children shrieked, clawing at the carpet, nails scraping against the wood. "Don't!" The power of their fear crashed over her, momentarily halting her. She felt the shadows push back, pressing against her with the weight of countless nameless horrors. "Jess," she whispered to herself, "you have to be strong." With one determined move, she scooped the youngest into her arms, ushering the older child along. It was time to confront whatever this thing was. As they reached the hallway, the atmosphere shifted once more. The house groaned with a deep hunger, swallowing their breaths. "Mommy, where are we going?" The older child's voice trembled, striking her like a thin blade. "Out. Just follow me." Panic surged like a shockwave, igniting her limbs to move faster. They dashed down the corridor, the walls constricting around them. Every inch felt hostile, every step was a prayer. Then, a loud bang echoed behind them, a sudden eruption that shattered the suffocating silence. A family portrait above them crashed to the ground, glass shattering like the fragments of her shattered sanity. "Run!" She screamed, but her heart thudded with fear. Was it too late? They stumbled toward the door, the way ahead darkening like a storm cloud. A force like thick tar dragged at them, trying to pull them back. Gritting her teeth, Jessica pushed against it with every ounce of her will. "Mommy, help!" The children cried, tears streaming down their faces. "We're almost there," she shouted desperately. Just as they reached for the doorknob, it twisted violently from the other side. Jessica froze, bile rising in her throat. "No, no!" With a howl, the door began to open, revealing only darkness on the other side, an abyss ready to swallow them. In that split second, she had to decide: would she step back into the home, the whispers promising comfort, or would she face the unrelenting darkness that beckoned from beyond? As a cold gust of air slipped past her, ruffling her hair, she felt dread creep back in. The voice echoed in her mind, a serpent coiling tighter around her heart. "Jessica. We're waiting for you." And somewhere deep within the shadows, something stirred, something hungry, ready to feast. But what lay beyond that door, and was there truly any escape at all? The door creaked open wider, an invitation shaped in darkness that loomed like a ravenous maw. Jessica's heart thundered, a frantic drum that drowned out the shadows whispering her name. "Mommy." The children clung to her, eyes wide, innocent desperation painting their faces. They felt the intensity of the gloom swirl around them, a creature woven from their worst nightmares. "Please, let us go," she urged, every instinct screaming to flee. But the darkness did not simply retreat. It pulsated, alive, a consuming tide ready to engulf them whole. "Don't be scared," Jess, the voice lilted, sweet yet predatory. It cocooned her thoughts like a silken trap. Her mind raced. Who was it? The voice tugged at her memory, but fear shrouded against recognition. The chill wind was now a gust, sending shivers through her spine. She felt its icy fingers graze her skin, thicker than air, pressing and pushing her, pulling her into its depths. With a swift, desperate swipe, she yanked her children closer, blocking out the whispers, blocking out the dark. "I want to let you take them," she screamed, her voice fierce yet trembling. As she stepped back toward the familiar safety of the living room, the shadows flickered like angry insects. "Stay with us." The house shivered as it echoed back her words, bending them into sinister delight. "Come," she retorted, clenching her jaw. "We're leaving. Now." But the walls shifted, closing in with a malevolent intent. Heaviness darkened the air as if the very structure of the house sought to topple over her, like an avalanche set to bury her beneath the weight of dread. "Mommy." The younger child wailed, a sound that dug deep into her heart like a serrated blade. "I don't want to play with them." "Neither do I, sweetheart." She pressed a quick kiss to his forehead, a fleeting moment of warmth in the cold chaos. Time slowed as she searched for a way through the darkness beyond the door. It was now or never. With fierce determination, she forced herself toward the shadowy threshold, dragging her children along like lifelines, each step fueled by her frantic will to protect them. The cold intensified, rushing breath sweeping down her back. Another crash echoed behind them, this time louder, as if the house was throwing a fit, angry at their defiance. A swirling mass of shadows darkened the hallway, reaching out in all directions, fingers stretching like claws. "Please!" Jessica cried, refusing to waver. "This isn't your home." Her voice echoed back, mimicked almost playfully, twisting her own words against her. And there, amongst the flickering shadows, something shifted. A figure, derivatives of darkness and fear non-human, twisting into shapes all too familiar and yet so wrong. "Mommy, I want them," rasped the voice of her oldest son, eyes vacant and glassy. The family resemblance twisted her stomach. "No." Jessica pulled the children close, her heart racing as dread consumed her. "You're not him." The boy smiled, but it was a grin that chilled her blood, a reflection too unsettling to bear. "Come play, Mommy," something deep within her core screamed. She wasn't losing them. Not this time. With a deep, shuddering breath, she turned and lunged for the stairwell, an escape route, a fleeting hope. But a shadow lunged forward, blocking them, stretching into an infinite void that threatened to swallow all light. Time warped, every second stretching and contracting as if the universe conspired to thwart her. The walls whispered their warnings, pouring dark secrets into her ears. Was there truly no way out? "Jessica," the voice crooned, sweet as poison. "We're waiting, we'll always be here." The children began to giggle, a sound that curdled her blood. Lost in the haze of horror, she wrestled for control, clutching onto her children as if they were life vests in a stormy sea. "Stay right here," she shouted desperately, eyes darting around, searching for an escape as time twisted into madness. What awaited them at the top of those stairs? Was it freedom, or an even darker fate? The shadow loomed closer, thicker than fog, hungry, and the door creaked ominously. Behind her, revealing an expanse of night, could she fight through the storm, or would the darkness finally win? The darkness surged. Jessica felt it swallow the air around her, thick and heavy, like smoke suffocating her lungs. She gripped her children tighter, panic clawing at her throat. With each heartbeat, a pounding fear echoed through her veins. "Get back!" she shouted, her voice trembling but wild, filled with a ferocity born from desperation. The shadow pressed in from all directions, a suffocating armory of despair and chaos. It twisted and curled like a serpent, eager to strike. The hallway seemed to elongate, the exit not getting any closer. She felt like a marionette on tangled strings, yanked and pulled by the unseen presence, an entity relentless and impatient. "Hold on, we're almost there." The words came out raw and desperate as she dragged her children forward, their little feet stumbling behind her. "Mommy," one child whimpered, his voice a haunted whisper against the encroaching void. Jessica could feel it, the cold reverberating deep in her bones. "I'm scared." So was she. And the terror unleashed inside her collected like a storm. A fierce, protective mother wolf roared through her, igniting every ounce of courage she had left. "We're not playing any games. You don't belong here." Her assertion only fueled the dark laughter swelling within the walls, echoing with malicious joy. Shadows flickered, gnashing teeth, and disembodied faces leered at her from hidden corners. Were they real? Or just figments of her collapsing sanity? The living room felt farther now, a deceptive mirage. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shuddered. The sound, a gurgling growl, burst through the silence. The walls warped, shaking violently, as if the house itself was in agony. A scream ripped through the air, piercing the veil of dread. Jessica's grip tightened on her kids. "Run!" she ordered, urgency driving her to force them into motion again. They stumbled together toward the stairs, their breaths hitching in unison. Each step resonated in her chest like a drumbeat of doom as she realized how utterly vulnerable they were. "Mommy! Help!" The younger boy's tiny voice fleetingly anchored her, but also shattered her resolve. It wasn't just darkness, something was hunting them. She could feel its breath against her neck, a cold wind that sent visceral terror racing through her body. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a child, her son, only distorted, pulled from nightmares and clad in an aura of dismal gray. "Mommy, don't go!" The unrecognizable thing called out, its eyes wide, reflecting the abyss. Jessica staggered back, a vision of horror clouding her mind. "You're not my son!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "You're not real." The soft, familiar shapes she craved were twisted and corrupted by the malevolence that surrounded her. "Join us, Mommy." A chorus resonated, nursery rhymes twisted into sinister allure. Hundreds of voices, all whispering sweetly, beckoned her, clawing at her resolve. They pulled her into a trance, as if tethering her will to the dark. "Run!" she screamed again, her heart racing, dread wrapping her in icy fingers. She felt them slip her children's hands loosen against her grip. "Never let go." She lunged for the steps again, but this time, the shadows coiled tightly around her, suffocating. A shrill giggle pierced the darkness, echoing through her skull. Would she lose them? Would they be consumed by shadows? Could she ever escape? As they stumbled into the darkness of the stairwell, a wall of sheer blackness surged upward, threatening to silence her cries forever. The door behind them slammed shut, locking away any chance of escape. And then, the shadows whispered sweet promises, songs of entrapment, illusions of comfort. "Mommy, we're waiting forever," whispers sang from the void. Jessica turned, seizing a fleeting moment. The door at the top of the stairs flickered. Was it light? Or another trap? The shadows thickened around her, hunger and despair entwined, ready to claim what they sought. Would she step into the light and face whatever lay beyond? Or would she be lost forever? The shadows seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with an eager pulse, drawing closer like a thick mist. Jessica felt the terror jackknife through her spine. The flickering light at the top of the stairs was both a beacon and a tease. It felt too bright to be genuine, a false glimmer mocking her plight. "Mommy!" her youngest cried, his voice slicing through the darkness. The sound was both a reassurance and a sorrowful reminder of their vulnerable state. She couldn't lose them, not here, not now. With every ounce of strength, she surged upward, dragging her children along, their tiny feet pounding rhythmically on the cold wooden steps. The oppressive darkness clawed at their heels, and the whispers clung to her body like a heavy cloak. "Come play with us, join us forever." Behind her, the shadows writhed, forming grotesque shapes, faces she almost recognized, twisted into expressions of anguished longing. How many had been trapped here before? "Go away!" she screamed, her voice cracking. She was losing time, losing hope, every second eroding her resolve. The light became sharper and more tangible. It beckoned like an open door to salvation. Just a little farther. Jessica gasped, her lungs burning and legs fighting against the weight of despair. "Mommy, don't!" her daughter whimpered, fear glittering in her eyes, reflecting the darkness that loomed around them. Jessica stiffened, ready to lash out at anything trying to break her family apart. But guilt squeezed her heart. What if they were right? What if the light wasn't real? What if no? She shook her head, banishing the dreadful thoughts. They needed to believe, to trust her. "Hold on to me." Her scream rose, tinged with an urgency that felt as if it would implode, collapsing with all the terror inside her. As they neared the top, the door wavered ominously, fluttering like a flag in a storm. She kicked it hard with her foot, the wood splintering slightly at the contact. "Let us out. Please." The door gave way, flying open with a force that lit the room beyond with an eerie glow. But the chamber was not the sanctuary she hoped for. Instead, it was a vomitous swirl of chaos, walls bloated with grotesque artwork, screaming faces, disfigured bodies tangled in despair. It felt like a gallery of torment, designed to ensnare. Jessica's heart raced. The dark figures swarmed behind her, hissing like serpents ready to strike. "In here," she urged, throwing herself and her children across the threshold. They tumbled inside, landing in a heap as the door slammed shut behind them, sealing the darkness away. Breathless, Jessica looked up, fear curling in her chest. The room pulsed with an unsettling energy, shadows now shifting along the walls, a malicious dance of silhouettes. "We're safe for a moment," she whispered, clutching her kids tight. But then, a soft chuckle broke the oppressive silence, chilling her blood. The laughter morphed, warping into something deeply familiar, a teasing echo of her children's voices. "Mommy, why did you bring us here?" They giggled, innocent but laced with an ominous edge. The realization began to settle within her like lead. The laughter wasn't entirely her children's, it was the darkness mimicking their sound, reflecting her deepest fears. And whatever awaited them here, it was hungry. "Mommy," another voice chimed, twisting into a melody she couldn't bear to recognize. It wasn't just an echo anymore, it was invitation. Jessica's stomach sank. What had she unleashed? And then came the shimmer of movement, a shadow breaking free from the corners of the room, slithering closer with a sinister intent. It looked organic, pulsing, alive, a dark hand reaching for her. Her instincts flared. "Run!" she cried, the command bursting forth in raw desperation, but there was nowhere left to escape. The looming shadows had a plan, and it was determined to paint a new nightmare on her reality. What was really waiting in the depths of that warped room? For Jessica, the true horror was just about to begin. The shadows coiled tighter around Jessica, their sinister whispers growing into a deafening roar. "Mommy, come play!" The voices intertwined with the laughter of her children, rosy innocence now twisted into dark mockery. Panic surged in her chest as she felt the raw essence of fear clawing at her insides. "No!" she shouted, the word bursting from her lips like a long-buried scream. "You're not my kids!" She pushed them behind her, instinctively guarding them against the approaching darkness, her heart racing as if to outrun the nightmare that loomed before her. It was all too familiar, too real, a cruel reflection of her worst fears taking form before her very eyes. The room pulsed with a grotesque life, walls breathing in sync with her terror. And just beyond them, a dark hand reached, fingers curling like hungry vines, ready to ensnare. "Get away from us!" Jessica retaliated, daring to step forward, fueled by a mother's fierce love. She needed to protect them, needed to break whatever spell held them in thrall. Another laugh echoed around them, chilling and sweet, a haunting lullaby that dripped malice. "Mommy, we can be together forever." That voice sent shockwaves through her, echoing too closely like the remnants of memories she dared not revisit. "You're wrong. I will never let you take them!" she screamed, her voice a desperate battle cry against encroaching despair. Gathering her strength, Jessica snatched her children's hands and began to back away, each step feeling like a precarious battle against the depth of the darkness. "To the door!" she urged, trembling yet resolute. "We can escape, we have to try." They bolted toward the exit, darkness snapping at their heels, growing hungrier with each passing second. As they reached the door, it slammed open suddenly, propelled by an unseen force. Squinting against the bright light that flooded in, she felt the warmth touch her skin, a stark contrast to the chilling darkness that loomed behind them. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins, propelling them forward. "Stay close!" she commanded, feeling her heart pound against her ribs like a warning bell. They sprinted through the open door, spilling out into the bright, blinding light. Then, with a sickening lurch, they were standing in the middle of their sunny living room. The familiar sight wrapped around them, warm and inviting as sunlight poured through the windows. Jessica's breath hitched. Was it a trick? The shadows followed behind them, but they curled away, dissipating like smoke under the brilliant light. "Mommy, are we safe?" her eldest croaked, looking up at her with wide, fearful eyes. "For now," she murmured, pulling them into a tight embrace, relief flooding her. "But stay close. We have to make sure they can't come back." The laughter fell silent, the room still, yet she could feel the echo of the darkness hovering just outside their door. She glanced around, trying to catch her breath. Pictures adorned the walls, snapshots of joy and laughter that stood in stark contrast to the war waging in her heart. Suddenly, a knock echoed from the front door. Her blood ran cold. "It's them!" She hissed, panic surging through her. Quick, hide. She shoved her children beneath the dining table, crouching low so they wouldn't be seen. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Let me in, Jessica. That sweet, familiar voice drifted through the door, honey-soaked and hauntingly twisted. Stay quiet. Jessica whispered fiercely. Don't move. Sorrow and terror intertwined as she realized the voice was her own, a chilling echo of the love she felt for her children, now tainted with menace. The shadow lurking just beyond the threshold was not just a monster, it was a thing born out of her deepest fears. Mommy, I want to go to you, the familiar voice sang through the crack of the door. It's safe here, we can play forever. Trembling, Jessica could feel the darkness coil closer. It knew her weakness. You've pulled us into your game long enough. She snapped, her voice breaking. She felt a surge of defiance swell within her core. This was her life. Now. It was time to take back control. Taking a deep breath, she stepped toward the door. You don't belong here. You can't keep us trapped. The door rattled ominously, shadows whispering behind her back, eager to consume her every word. But she pressed forward, centering herself. She had her children, and nothing would tear them apart. I will protect them, and you will never take that from me. She shouted, her voice carrying the fierce weight of her resolve. The shadows pulled back with her words, retreating under the power of her strength. With a decisive motion, she flung open the front door, confronting the swirling darkness outside. It rippled and faltered before her, its grip on her world weakening. You are not welcome here. She took a stand, her children peeking from beneath the table, their eyes wide yet filled with hope. The darkness recoiled as the light burst forth, pushing back against its twisted form, ripping apart the sinister echoes of fear. Go back to where you came from. She roared, her voice steady and confident. And at that moment, the wall of shadows shattered, dissipating into nothingness, leaving only a lingering chill that slowly faded into the air. A calmness settled over their home, a soft reminder of safety returning, cleaning the echoes of terror that had haunted them. Jessica knelt, gathering her children into her arms, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against hers. We're okay now, she whispered, kissing the top of their heads. We're safe. As they huddled close, the ever-watchful shadows slowly receded, but a reminder remained, a promise that darkness lurks waiting for weak moments. Yet Jessica knew now. She was a warrior for her family, and as long as they stood together, love would always triumph over the darkness. So, what did we learn? She asked her children, smile breaking through the shadows of fear. Stick together. They chimed back, and their laughter rang through the house, sweet and pure, a sound more powerful than any darkness could ever capture. And as they embraced, the sunlight filled every corner of their home, solidifying their sanctuary against whatever threats dared to loom in the edges of night. Now that was a victory worth celebrating, but for the viewer, let this story be a reminder: darkness may whisper and shadows may creep, but love, honesty, and fierce protection will always shine through. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second, hit that button so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the tales coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think happened next? And don't forget to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.